Okay, I have a feeling we need to start today's deep dive with a bit of a confession,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe just a reality check.
Yeah.
When we talk about the people we love, especially our kids, but really anyone, we have this default setting.
Mm-hmm. The gold standard.
The gold standard is presence, being there.
Maximum bandwidth.
Yeah.
100%. All the time.
Right. And because we put presence on this pedestal, we treat absence like it's the absolute enemy.
The failure.
A failure, a void. If you're not present, you're dropping the ball. But today, we're looking at a source that just completely flips that script.
I'm really glad we're tackling this one.
We're doing a deep dive into an essay titled Absence by the writer and philosopher Pedro Malha.
And this isn't, your typical 5 tips to be a more mindful parent article. Malha is doing something much more radical here. He's arguing that absence, it isn't a mistake. He suggests it's actually a fundamental structural part of love itself.
Which, to be honest, that sounds incredibly counterintuitive.
It does.
It almost sounds like an excuse you'd make up to feel better about working late or something.
I know it sounds defensive at first. But his argument is that absence is a condition. It's the water we swim in.
Yeah.
And understanding it might be the only way to stop that constant low-grade guilt that I think defines modern parenting.
I think everyone listening knows that guilt. It's the background noise of life. So let's get into the mechanics of this. Malha starts by redefining what absence actually is.
Right.
Because when I hear absence, I think of abandonment. I think of walking out the door. But he's not talking about that, is he?
No, and that is the crucial distinction to make right at the start. We think of absence as a clean break.
A big event.
A dramatic event. You're
Yeah.
here, then you're gone. But Malha describes it as something much more pervasive. He says it seeps in quietly.
Seeps in. That is a much spookier image than just leaving.
It is, but it's more accurate. He argues that absence runs alongside care. It coexists with it.
So it's not the opposite of love.
It's not the opposite of love. It's woven into the very texture of it.
Okay, but let's ground that. Because woven into the texture sounds nice and poetic. But what does that look like on a Tuesday afternoon?
Well, think about the concept of the divided mind. Malha points out that absence happens when you're physically in the room, but your mind is just elsewhere.
Right?
You're building a Lego tower, but you're mentally drafting an email or worrying about a bill, or you're just zoned out from exhaustion.
Oh, the physically present, mentally absent phenomena. We all know that one.
Yeah.
You're nodding at your kid's story, but you're actually thinking, did the chicken in the fridge go bad? Or did I reply to that text from my boss?
Exactly that. But Malha goes even deeper. He says absence is also when you're sitting right beside a child trying to connect and you can't reach what they're feeling. There's a gap. You're physically close, but emotionally you can't bridge that distance. He counts that as absence too.
That's interesting. Usually we just call that miscommunication or a bad day, but framing it as absence, it highlights the limitation. It's about being human. You can't actually be another person, no matter how much you love them.
And that leads to his first big point about the parent's transformation. Malha has this line that really stuck with me.
What's that?
He says, parenting begins with a form of disappearance.
Wow. That is a heavy way to put it. We usually talk about parenting as adding to your life. You add a family member, you add joy.
You add noise.
A lot of noise. But he frames it as a subtraction.
A subtraction of the self. He says, before a child, your life has a specific shape. Afterward, that shape is just permanently altered.
And he lists the things that are lost, right? Time, sleep, privacy.
The usual suspects. But then he adds thought itself.
Thought itself, yeah. That one hit me harder than the sleep deprivation, honestly.
Why do you think that one stood out?
Because it's the one we don't talk about. We talk about being tired, but losing the continuity of your own mind. That feeling that you can hold a single thought from beginning to end because you're constantly being interrupted or anticipating a need. That's a profound absence. You're absent from your own head.
That is exactly what he's getting at. And he calls this an unclean exchange.
Why unclean?
Yeah, he contrasts it with sacrifice. See, sacrifice implies a transaction. It's almost noble.
Right. I give up this, I get that. It's chosen.
It's chosen, and it's done. But Massa says this isn't a one-time deal. It's an unclean exchange because it's lived repeatedly in fragments every single day.
I see.
As he puts it, something of you is regularly elsewhere. and something of you is regularly missing.
It's the fragmentation.
Yeah.
It's not that you gave up your identity for a medal. It's that your identity got scattered across the floor like those Legos.
And that scattering creates a new state of awareness. He describes it as a residue of listening.
A residue of listening.
Even when you're not with your kids, you're at work, or it's the early hours and the house is quiet, there's this background process running.
You're scanning.
You're scanning? You're listening for a cry, a footstep, a phone call.
You're never truly off.
You're never off. He calls it leaning outward.
Leaning outward.
Your internal gravity has shifted. A part of you is always oriented toward them, even when they aren't there. And because you're always leaning outward, the person you were before, the pre-parent self, it becomes hard to locate.
This explains so much about that specific frustration you feel when you finally get me time.
Yes.
You know, you have an afternoon to yourself, but you can't actually relax. You're just sitting there, but your brain is still leaning outward.
You can't just snap back into the old shape. And this brings us right to the core conflict of the essay.
The guilt.
The guilt, because this feeling of being scattered, of being absent even when you're there, it just, it conflicts with our cultural definition of a good parent.
Oh, absolutely. The cultural narrative is that we should feel full, grateful. We should be soaking it all in. If you admit, hey, I feel like I'm disappearing or I feel absent, it just sounds like a complaint. It sounds like you don't love your kid.
And that's the trap. But this is where Maha drops what I think is the most important insight of the entire piece.
Okay.
We have to distinguish between moral absence and structural absence.
Okay, let's slow down on this one because this feels like the life raft concept here.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So we tend to view absence as a moral failing.
Right.
I'm absent because I'm selfish, or I'm absent because I'm disorganized, or I'm not trying hard enough. That's the moral view. It assigns blame to your character.
Right. It says, if I were a better person, I wouldn't be absent.
Exactly. But Mala argues that absence is structural. It arises precisely because of responsibility. Think about it. You're absent because you're earning money to feed the family. You're absent because you're caring for a sibling. You're absent because you are exhausted. And you are exhausted because of the work of parenting.
So the absence isn't a betrayal of the care.
No.
It's a symptom of the care.
Precisely. He says, none of this requires wrongdoing. It's a resource issue. When care is constant, availability is uneven. Right. It's physically impossible to be fully present for financial provision, emotional support, and household logistics all at the exact same moment.
That is actually a huge relief to hear. Because if it's structural, it isn't a sin.
No.
It's just the logistics of survival.
It is the architecture of the job. Malha says that when we don't name this, when we call it a moral failing, it hardens inside us.
It becomes resentment.
Resentment, numbness,
Right.
or just that low, constant hum of I'm failing.
But when we do name it, when we call it structural,
It softens. It doesn't disappear. The absence is still there, but it loses its sting. You stop interpreting your exhaustion as a lack of love. You realize, I'm absent right now because I'm taking care of things.
it feels like this also requires us to accept that our children are going to experience that absence. And that is the scary part. We think if we aren't there, we're damaging them.
That is the fear. But Malha addresses this head on. He argues that experiencing parental absence isn't inherently damaging. In fact, he says, it's necessary.
Necessary for what?
It's how children learn continuity. They learn that you go and you come back. They learn that the relationship survives the gap.
It's the object permanence of love.
Yes. The danger, and he's careful here, is when absence gets confused with abandonment. And interestingly, he notes that this confusion often starts with the parent.
What do you mean by that?
If the parent is terrified of their own absence, if you're anxious and apologetic every time you leave, or if you treat every separation like a tragedy, the child senses that fear. They think, oh, dad is freaking out about leaving, so leaving must be dangerous.
So our guilt actually makes the separation harder for them?
It loads the moment with anxiety. If you treat absence as a natural part of the rhythm, structural, not moral, the child is more likely to accept it that way too.
There's another dimension of absence he touches on that I found really challenging. It's not about physical separation.
Oh,
It's about knowing.
epistemic absence.
Okay, fancy philosophical term, but let's break it down.
Epistemic just relates to knowledge. In modern parenting, there's this immense pressure to be attuned. We feel we need to know everything going on in our child's inner world. Who are they mad at? What are they afraid of?
We want the dashboard view, full access to the data.
But Mala says reality is partial knowing. There are moments, many moments, where your child's inner world is simply closed to you.
Yeah.
They might not have the words, they might not want to share, or they might just be figuring it out themselves.
And that drives us crazy. We see a mood shift, the kid is grumpy or quiet, and we panic. What's wrong? Tell me. Let me fix it.
We treat that lack of information as a problem to be solved. We think, if I were a better parent, I'd know what's wrong.
Right.
But Mala insists this is not a problem, it's a condition. There will always be vast regions of your child's life that you cannot enter.
And accepting that is actually a form of respect, isn't it?
It is. It's accepting their otherness. If you knew everything they were thinking, they wouldn't be a separate person, they'd be an extension of you. Epistemic absence is the space where their individuality grows.
That gets so much harder as they get older, though. When they're toddlers, the secrets are small. When they're teenagers, partial knowing feels like a chasm.
It does, and this leads to his point about how absence changes shape over time. He calls this redistribution.
I like that term better than loss.
It is more accurate. In the early years, absence is physical daycare drop-offs, bedtime. But later, it's about privacy, independence, secrets.
Right.
The child is being redistributed into the world. He writes that they become less contained within the parental field.
Their gravity shifts, their friends matter more, their own thoughts matter more.
But here's where the psychology gets really interesting. Mala suggests that when a child turns away, when they close that bedroom door, it can trigger something deep in the parent.
How so?
It echoes the parent's own older memories of being unseen or left behind.
So if I had a lonely childhood, my kid just wanting some privacy feels like a personal rejection.
Exactly. The present moment is carrying the weight of the past. The reaction is disproportionate because you aren't just reacting to a closed door, you are reacting to an old wound.
And recognizing that this is my history, not just their action, that's key.
It is.
Speaking of history, there was a point about routine that I think everyone will relate to. The way memory works during those super busy years.
The compression of time.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, we live these days that are just saturated with activity. The morning rush, the logistics, the driving, the cleanup. The days are full. But he points out that memory thins under repetition because every day looks like every other day. The brain just, it stops recording the details.
Which is why I can remember a specific vacation from 3 years ago vividly, but I can't remember what happened last November at all.
It is all a blur. And Mall argues this is a form of absence, too. It's not emptiness, the days were full, but it's a compression of experience.
And the cruel twist is that later, this creates a strange nostalgia. We look back and we miss the intensity because we forget the drudgery.
The immediacy is gone. We miss the noise because we aren't carrying the headache of it anymore.
Right. Distance changes the weight of the burden.
It does.
I want to touch on one more type of absence he mentions. It's maybe the darkest one, but we have to go there. Forward-facing absence.
This is the anticipatory loss. It's the knowledge that sits in the back of every parent's mind. No matter how much you do, you cannot protect your children from future pain.
That's the shadow at the edge of the crib.
It is. Mala says, to care deeply is to know in advance that you will not always be sufficient.
Oof.
We try to mask this fear with control. We sign them up for lessons, we track their location, we organize their lives. We think if we get the logistics right, they'll be safe.
But it's an illusion.
It is. There are experiences the child will have alone. Heartbreaks, failures, dangers, separations that can't be prevented. And living without awareness that forward-facing absence is the burden of love.
He also mentions the absence between partners in this whole process.
Which is so important.
Because you'd think if we're both in the trenches together, we're connected.
You would think so. But he notes that shared responsibility doesn't guarantee shared experience.
Right.
You and your partner might live through the same decade, raising the same kids, but you're carrying parallel stories.
Parallel stories. That rings true.
You have different moments with the kids, you carry different stressors. You might be the one worried about medical appointments, and they're the one worried about the college fund.
You're in the same house, but in different mental rooms.
And if you don't realize that, it creates isolation. You assume the other person gets it because they're there, but they were in a different version of there.
Recognizing that gap is crucial.
Absolutely.
So we have all these layers: structural absence, epistemic absence, the compression of memory, the parallel lives. It feels like a lot of gaps.
It is.
So what's the solution? How do we fix it?
And here is the liberation. Malha is very clear. Absence is not resolved. Oh.
It doesn't end. You don't win parenting by eliminating the gaps. Absence remains a companion to love throughout the entire journey.
That sounds remarkably freeing, actually. If I can't fix it, I can stop fighting it.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
Not to eliminate absence, but to stop resisting it. He says when absence is recognized, when we name it as structural, as necessary, it becomes lighter.
How so?
Not because it weighs less, but because it is no longer carried with shame.
You have more energy for the presence because you weren't burning it all up, feeling guilty about the absence.
Exactly. And his final definition of connection is something I think I'm going to write on a Post-it note.
Read it to us.
He says connection does not require continuous contact. Love does not depend on constant access. What matters is the ability to remain oriented toward one another across the distance.
Oriented toward one another across the distance.
It allows for the gaps, it allows for the silence, it allows for the child to walk away and for the parent to be at work, and the line between them it's an invisible tether. It's not about holding on tight physically. It's about the tension in that line that spans the space.
And Mallal argues that this distance is what holds the future open. It allows the child to become themselves while still being held in mind.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling that familiar guilt, maybe you're at work right now, maybe you went in the bathroom for 5 minutes just to breathe. Maybe your teenager won't talk to you. Remember this, that gap isn't a failure. It's part of the architecture.
It's how the structure is built.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a thought to mull over. It's something Mala hints at toward the end, and it's a bit of a curveball.
The unfamiliar gap.
Right. We spend years in this structural absence, feeling torn, leaning outward. But eventually the children grow up.
Yeah.
The constant demand recedes, the noise stops, the logistics fade.
And suddenly the absence that was exhausting, I have no time for myself, it flips. It becomes an empty space you have to fill.
Exactly. If your entire identity has been shaped by leaning outward toward your child, who are you when you finally have to lean back in?
That's the question.
So here's the challenge for today. Identify one part of yourself that is leaning outward right now, worrying, checking, planning for someone else. And just ask yourself, what would happen if I reclaim just a little bit of that gravity for myself today? Not because you don't love them, but because you need to exist too.
A profound question to end on.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
A pleasure as always.